Hey guys, welcome to my office. Welcome to Live Fit today. This is Tanya Gustafson, your nutritionist and fitness coach with Fit Nutrition. Today is going to be a little different. The last, couple of podcasts I started off and wanted to share a lot of things about, your everyday health and things that you can do to improve. And that's great. And I'm going to continue to do that. Absolutely. Today, though, there's been something that's bugging me, something that's been, kind of driving me ever since the beginning of the year, because probably most of you that follow me, you'd know that I write some articles, that I got a blog on my website, and those articles get posted in a local newspaper here in Kelowna, BC, that's where I'm from, and on media outlets like Castanet and things like that. So they go out there every second week, and there's thousands and thousands of people that read it. It's great. Lots of people get interested in their health, and I've been doing it for many, many years. And so this past January, I was getting a little bit frustrated with not having enough answers regarding the whole situation that we're living in this world right now, right? So, we hear one thing from the news media, and we hear other things from different people online, and we talk to health professionals, or at least I do, and this and that, and there's lots of things that aren't driving. And so I thought, well, I have a lot of questions, and I like answers. I like information. So if I'm having questions, I'm thinking other people are probably having questions as well too. I mean, it's a fair assumption, right? They say that nothing's a dumb question, right? So I really believe that. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to see if I can get answers to my questions, and then I'm going to provide them to my readers. That would be a great idea, right? Okay, I thought it was a great idea. I did a lot of work on it, sent out a lot of letters, didn't get a lot of responses. So when I finally did get a response, I did get something from Dr. Bonnie Henry's office. I did get a response back, although it wasn't directly from her. It was somebody from their PR department. And I noted that, so that was fine. And so I put all my article together. I did it like a Q&A. It's on my blog here on the website. The link's down below in the chat there. And I submitted it, to both my editors, and I did a Q&A form. I posed my question. I said that I did a copy paste of the answers that I got back from her office, or copy paste from the link that they sent me, that sort of stuff, and posted it that way, did up the article, sent it in, and nobody would run it. I was literally shocked, because, the person who's making our health orders here in British Columbia, in Canada, here where I am, that was the office that these responses came from. And so that started me sort of down a rabbit hole of looking for more information and trying to figure out why. And, I'm probably not going to figure out why so much, because it's political, clearly. But I've just been collecting information about all the stuff that I know just in my own little world. And I've got, as you can see, several pages here of stuff that I've collected and typed up and printed off, because I didn't want to miss anything. And you know what, actually, there's probably a few other things that, as I'm going through here, I'm going to realize that there's something that I missed. But so I'm going to just go through this. How about that? I'm just going to go through a little bit of how, how it prompted me. That's what prompted me. And just kind of do like a timeline. See if you're okay with that. All right. I'd love to hear your comments on this. If you find any of this information interesting, or something that you didn't know, or something that you knew and you thought, wow, at least someone else is saying something, then please share it. Okay. Pass it on to somebody else, because I am a nutritionist, I'm a fitness coach, I'm a health enthusiast, I'm a health nut. I look for things all the time. I listen to independent news sources. I listen to what our people in positions of power are saying. And I would like to hear discussion between the two, and I haven't. So that's sort of what's prompting me. So 2 weeks, right? That's what we were told. 2 weeks back, March, here in BC, back March 17th of 2020 is when a public health emergency was declared. And the very next day, on March 18th, a state of emergency was declared. So that gives, the public health officers and different bodies more power, more authority to do things and to put things in order that they wouldn't normally have. So those emergency powers are very important, and you'll find that going forward if you're following along anywhere. And so And then right away, then on March 20th, 2 days later, all dine-in restaurants were closed down. And on the next day, March 21st, all personal care facilities were shut down. So basically, like all those things, all those places that you go to on a daily basis, with the exception of getting groceries, were pretty much closed down. And, everybody did that. We thought, okay, we were told it's going to be 2 weeks. Everybody can live for 2 weeks. People were, it was a little crazy in the grocery stores. Honestly, anyone remember that? The toilet paper was going off the shelves. You couldn't buy toilet paper or cleaning supplies or paper towels, anything like that. It was a little bit nuts. Fortunately, I'm one of those people that likes to buy in bulk normally. And it just, when things are on sale, and I just leave them in my storage area under my stairs. And so I could avoid the stores at that time. And I was like, yep, that's fine. I'll just avoid the chaos. And so life goes on, and in 2 weeks, everything will be back to normal. People will be good and we'll be good. And actually, not 2 weeks, but a month later. So things were kind of, floating along, but a month later on April 17th, and I put all the links to where I'm getting all this information, by the way. If you check down in the chat, there's some links. If I say numbers, if I say, public health or whatever, it's down there. Okay. The links are there. So on April 17th, our public health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, actually announced that BC had succeeded, and I'm quoting here, I copy pasted it, so I don't want to misquote, that BC had succeeded in reducing the number of cases. The healthcare system was not overwhelmed, and that the province had indeed flattened the curve. And that was the goal, right? So yay, everyone was excited. Yet, as we rolled out into summer, that was spring, right? April, as we rolled out into summer, that didn't happen. We flattened the curve. That nothing from that showed that we had, based on the rules that they were telling us that we now had to follow and continue to follow, and we are continuing them now. We have some of the most strict rules in North America, in Eastern Canada. Here we're a little bit not quite so far gone yet, and I am just praying and believing that doesn't happen. That common sense prevails, and that we can roll that back where it actually should be. So, yeah. So yet, our summer came, our gyms were shut down, things like that. Right away, all those places with the restaurants and stuff, all those places where people would go, where lots of people would go and be inside, they were all shut down, right? So all those things closed. And then yet in the 2 weeks, it didn't open up. And yet a month later, when it was declared that the curve had flattened here in BC, it still didn't open up. And so summer kind of went on. Our churches were closed, and then opened up finally somewhere. I can't remember the exact day, and I couldn't find the exact day as I looked. Sorry about that. I'm sure it's out there. But you all know that it did open, for those of you who go to church, and we were allowed 50 people. We were allowed 50 people for gatherings. We were allowed 50 people to go to church, things like that. So we had to sign up to make sure that, we could get our seat in church, and then, and it went on like that. And then, come fall, we were told, second wave is coming and bad things are going to happen again. And churches were shut down again. And things were, pulled back once again and reined in and stuff like that. And more mandates were happening, and masking starting to say, well, we highly recommend. And then it was like, oh, first of all, it was we highly recommend, or we recommend. Actually, first of all, if you look back at all the videos, it was, no, we don't recommend them at all. They're not good. They're not good for you. I shared a video actually a couple days ago, maybe a week ago now. It was a great compilation. If I can find that, I'll go back and find that and add this to the list down below. I should have done that earlier. Sorry. But there was a great compilation that somebody did about all just different news media clips, mainstream media clips of the public health officials, about government officials in different places here in BC, Ontario, actually down in the States, different places, what people were saying, and then what they were saying now, what they said then, what they said now. And here in BC, I'll speak to that because our public health official, our public health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, was shown several times to be saying, no, masks, you shouldn't be wearing them. They're not healthy. You don't have to worry about it. Don't wear. I think they showed 4 or 5 little clips of that. And then another clip along in the montage there showed her saying, I've never said not to wear masks. where she clearly had, and it was all on camera. So all of these things just, create a lot of doubt. They create a lot of distrust. They create a lot of uneasiness, and people have questions. And like I said, I had questions. And when things aren't being answered, or when they're not even allowed to be asked, is what really is kind of like a thorn in my side, right? That's sort of stuck in my craw. So some churches decided that they weren't going to close, right? You all heard about that in the news. Yeah, Pastor James Coates, I think, was the biggest news here in Canada, in Alberta, there in Edmonton. He was actually jailed for 5 weeks. His trial first day happened today, and so you can look for that report online. And actually, it went really well. I was just reading that before I jumped on here. And so Alberta Health Services actually sent police officers and private security and health people to fence off and lock up a church. We're in Canada. When has that ever happened before? And the thing is, nobody even bothered to look and see how many cases were coming from that church, which there haven't been any coming from that church. So of 37 consecutive weeks of service, holding service at maximum fire code capacity in their building, they were not exceeding the fire code. They were not breaking the law that way. They have had no cases. And here in Kelowna as well, too, we have a church here, Harvest Church, that's been running. They only shut down 2 weeks at the very beginning when it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They actually only did the 2 weeks and they opened back up. They have been running multiple services and different things, 2 to 3 times per week. And their congregation has grown. They've been inside all winter. And, so they've been operating like the 13 months with no cases. So clearly that's not a thing. And out of the multiple cases in BC, I think the latest stat, I think Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson said it a couple of weeks ago, that out of all of the cases that were in BC, I believe it was 130 only were traced back to anywhere for any church services. So if you take a look at how many churches are in BC, I don't think that's a huge threat, right? They're not all coming from there. So there, it's really arbitrary, and it doesn't make sense, a lot of these things, right? So, and I just wanted to share a few things that have happened just in my world, so if it's just in my little world here, in my little neighborhood here in where I live, and then I would think, well, if I'm just one person and all of these things, I know about all these things, or all these things have directly affected me, or they've directly happened to me, or, in some way that I'm experiencing it, how many more experiences like that? You can do the math, right? It's exponential across Canada with 38 million people. So, I just wanted people to start thinking about that and start doing the math in their head and thinking and asking questions and thinking, is something in my world not making sense? And where should I be asking? Who should I be asking? Where should I go for that information? And if I can't get that information, then maybe I should be starting to wonder. And I think we all should be starting to wonder. So I just wanted to also talk about a couple stats here before I move on to the personal experiences. So the total number of all deaths in BC for 2020, all deaths. There were 2 different statistical places that had this, and they were very close in number. So I'll give you the highest number just to, be reporting, not to, doing the dumbed down number or anything. But the total number of all deaths in BC, not just COVID, but all deaths in BC for all of 2020, there was 41,138. Okay. And the total number of deaths from all of last year, total number of COVID deaths from the whole of COVID to today, or to yesterday, or May 2nd, rather. Sorry, it's May 4th today. May 2nd, when I printed this out. The total for BC was 1,581. So 41,000 deaths in all of, last year, 41,138 for 2020. And for all of the COVID time, so all of 2020, all the way into 2021 until 2 days ago, 1,581. So there's an awful lot of deaths coming from an awful lot of other places. And, the sad reality is that people do die. And it is very sad. It's very sad when anybody passes away. I've had 3 people in my life pass away over the last year. And it is sad. It's very sad. Um, so I'm not going to make light of that. I never would. What I want people to think about is, do those numbers justify locking down the entire world? Locking down your entire world where, not allowing people to travel within their own province or within their own country, or to come and go as they please, infringing on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is the ultimate law of the land. The Charter was actually created to hold governments accountable so that they don't go above and beyond, and so they don't abuse the people. Like, the government works for us, right? The police work for us. We, the people, we are the people, and things, people, the officials, they work for us. That's why we elect them. They're elected officials. All right. So the things that have happened in my world over these past year, almost a year and a half, right? So a few people, there's a lot actually that happened just in my neighborhood. And I noticed that I was writing it down. I was like, oh, my neighbor, all different neighbors. So I've had three different neighbor incidences. One down the street from me ended up having to have an amputation. That was quite sudden. And he had an infection in the toe, and was told by one doctor, yeah, we should, have to get that right away. And another doctor said, no, we can wait. You don't have to come in. We'll, give you a different medicine. And put it off. Of course, they have all these phone conversations, not necessarily seeing the person because of COVID, right? So there was a lot of people with a lot of care issues that were neglected, that manifested into or morphed into much bigger problems than they should have been. So it turned out that instead of having to have the toe amputated, he had to have the majority of his lower leg amputated. So it's quite significant. Another neighbor who passed away, it was quite sad that he had 4th stage cancer, colon cancer, and then he was also discovered to have brain cancer. He thought he'd had a mini stroke, and the people he lives in the house where he lives, he rents the bottom. They had taken him to the hospital. Coincidentally, they work at the hospital, so that was the only saving grace with this situation, because he wasn't allowed to take anyone in with him. He wasn't allowed to have a friend, a family member, whatever, come with him. And this gentleman was suffering from, as they found out, brain tumors, more than one, 2 of them. And, of course, was having dizziness, and he was having memory issues, and, a little bit of speech problems and things like that. And he was not allowed to have anyone with him, which I think is criminal, because how is he supposed to remember what they're telling him? And how is he supposed to advocate for good health for himself? So the only saving grace, like I said, is the people he was renting from, they actually work at the hospital. And so they were able to go in only if they were on shift, right at the end, they could go in and see him. So some of the rules that were happening for people that had to end up in the hospital were just terrible, in my opinion. Yeah. So that was awful, pretty awful. My, the other neighbor at the end of my street ended up telling me that, a friend of hers, she messaged me and she said, have you ever heard about somebody passing away from something else, like from a disease or something, but it was listed as COVID once, you got the papers and you found out? And I said, yeah, actually, I have heard about that happening. And she said it happened to her friend. The friend was dealing with a death in the family. They received the papers, and she was so upset. The person had died of cancer, and it was, they were being told that it was a COVID death. And so that sort of thing is really happening. Again, like I'm saying, I'm just one person, and I've heard of more than one of these, so I'm just giving examples here. So that's pretty terrible, right? That was really happening. And again, the people that passed away that are in my family, lost 3 people. My grandpa really passed away. He was in the States, very elderly. So 2 of these were very elderly and one not so much. So my grandpa, 102. So he lived a long, long life, totally still cognitively all there. He's been in an extended care facility or a assisted living facility rather for several years with him and his wife, so they could have help with cooking and laundry and all that kind of stuff. But they were, totally all there. And then his wife passed away. And And when that happened, his daughters weren't allowed to come and visit him anymore. And he lived in the States, so I hadn't seen him for years. Just the way circumstances happened. But he always, we would write and whatever, but he wasn't allowed to have visitors after his wife passed away, which was very sad because now he's by himself. In the meanwhile, while he's in there after she passed away, he had a stroke. He'd had 2 amputations. He had, very poor circulation. So again, the legs, and had a stroke. And so although his mind was still sharp, he wasn't able to talk and communicate very well. And so having to do that over phone or, FaceTime wasn't a thing with him, then, that just wasn't really conducive to talking with his daughters or talking with me. I tried calling one time. It was really extremely difficult to have a conversation. We didn't actually, it didn't work well. The thing is, though, when he passed away, the home let his daughters come in and hold a funeral service. So why wouldn't they let them come in beforehand? Again, arbitrary decisions that are not serving the people. They don't make any sense, and they're not serving the people that need the interaction, that need this care, that need their people with them. My great aunt lived in the UK, and she, again, was living on her own. She was in her 90s. She would have been 100 in February. She was doing well. She lived on her own. She could still cook. She was doing everything for herself. A little slow moving, but she's living on her own. She ended up catching her foot between the commode and the bathtub and broke her foot. So she ended up in the hospital to get her foot taken care of. They said that they would send her back home, and they would send her with some care. So she would have daily care there at home. And then that changed. They decided, nope, she must stay in a home. And they wouldn't let her go back to her own home. They let her stay in like a convalescent type, extended care home there sort of thing. But then that limited her visitors, right? She could only have 1 visitor, 1 hour, 1 week. And so she did not want to be there. She has told my cousin several times she didn't want to be there. She wanted to be at home. She was not happy. She was not enjoying that at all. And then shortly afterwards, I heard that she had passed away in her sleep. So, I'm thankful that was peaceful. But those deaths of despair where people just get so tired, they just get so sad, they give up, because that wasn't like her. If you ever met her, she was pretty fiery. And then my mother passed away this past December, and that was really quite a shock because although my mom did have to have a surgery, she came out of that doing really well, had a great prognosis. It's in writing. We have it. And then she became one of the statistics of iatrogenic deaths, which means that there was harm involved, and there's harm acknowledged through the health region, because we've been advocating for change so that doesn't happen again with anybody else. And so for Mom, she'd had a feeding tube that it was pulled out accidentally, and so they went to the hospital to get it put back in. They wouldn't let my dad go in that particular hospital. He must wait outside. It's COVID rules and everything. And they did it so quick. I remember him telling me, she was out it seemed like no time at all. She was out. So she told him when he asked her, what happened, and she said, well, the nurse put it back in, called the doctor, said, should we do an X-ray or something and make sure it's in the right place? And the doctor took a look at it, and he said, no, we don't need to do that. It's fine. That happens all the time. It's in the right place. It turned out that it was not in the right place. And so my mom ended up becoming septic, and nobody knew exactly what was happening. She ended up going for a second surgery, and that's when she passed away. And so again, rushed because of COVID, trying to get people in and out super fast, trying to, keep room in the hospitals, and, we don't want extra people here. You might be bringing in germs, or you might get a germ, and instead of giving the patient the care that they needed. So, that's just, these things are happening, and they're sad. And what's wrong is that the mainstream media is not talking about the large numbers of people that are being affected negatively by the measures and restrictions that are being put in place and held in place, without producing the science that shows why they should still be putting those in place. Because if you're going to put extraordinary measures in place, it's incumbent on the people who are doing that to show that it will actually provide more benefit to the population rather than less benefit. So basically, the cure cannot be worse than the disease. And that is exactly where we're sitting at right now. And that's what people are questioning. That's why there's so many rallies around the country and around the world. There's 100,000 downtown in Montreal. There's tens of thousands in London, 100,000 in London, I think it was the other day. There's hundreds here in Kelowna. There's maybe 1,000 in Vancouver, and they're happening all over because people want answers and they're not getting them. And I say, it's wrong to not provide people the answers. You impose rules on a population, and then you don't provide information as to why you're doing it or the science where it's coming from. Everybody says, oh, let's follow the science. We're following the science. We're following the science, but no one ever produces that science. And so that brings me to there's a couple more. One more. Science and secrecy and things like that. So I have also heard that from a source in the hospital that that there's a gag order. They're not allowed to talk about anything to do with COVID, for fear of losing their jobs. And that's wrong, because these are people that are there, that are on the front lines. We keep saying, those are the people in the trenches doing the work, seeing the patients or not seeing the patients, but if they're not allowed to say anything, then that's wrong. Because what has the government got to hide? What has the provincial health officer have to hide by letting people speak and make comments and address the public, or answer questions? Because I think that's important, right? When we're shut down and we can't speak, when we can't ask questions, that's when it feels like you're living in China, I think, because that's what they do over there, right? So about that article, right? So I said I wrote that, and that was I wrote the article. I had a lot of questions. I wrote to Dr. Bonnie Henry's office. I wrote to Patty Haidu's office. I wrote to Adrian Dix's office. I wrote to our local MLA. I always get a response when I write to my local MLA, and he didn't have any answers for me. He directed me back to Bonnie Henry's office. I got an automatic reply from Mr. Dix's office saying that they would, contact me. Like, we've got your email. We'll contact you. That was several months ago. Still have not heard back. And I never did get any response from Ms. Heidi's office. So I did the article on the information that I received. I finally did get information back from Dr. Bonnie Henry's office. It was a person named Thomas Guerrero, who I found his profile on LinkedIn, and he is a public relations person, which I noted in my article. And that was still the one that was, they weren't going to run it. I literally copy pasted the answers that I was given to the questions that I submitted. And, I stated in my article, you can read it in the blog, and I put the link down in the chat there, or the information there. You can find it. And you can read that. It's interesting how some of the questions were not even answered, and then the answers to some of the questions. But, it's interesting why they won't print it. And so, but I did ask when I did call Bonnie Henry's office as well too. I called twice. The first call was not so nice. The person was not very helpful, and they were not very personable. They didn't really want to speak to me. And the second person, when I called another day, they were lovely, and I received, they were very warm, very willing to answer questions, very, very open to answer whatever they were able to. Lots of times you don't know the answer, but they were quite willing to have me answer questions. And then they would, trying to direct me, because they realized that I was asking more questions than they knew the answers to. Because of course they're just the person answering the phone, right? And they knew a little bit, but not a lot. And so I did. So then I asked, I said, okay, well, I have all these questions, obviously. And so does Dr. Bonnie Henry consult with people? Does she have a group or whatever that she consults with before she makes an order, or as she's imposing a rule or a mandate or something? And the person said, yes, she does. I said, perfect, great. Okay, so who are they? And may I have their email contacts so that I don't waste anyone's time and I can send my questions directly to the appropriate person, right? I thought that made sense to me. And the person said, oh no, we don't publish that information. And I said, well, why not? You mean like we can't know why can't we know? Like, why don't you publish that? And he said, well, I don't know. We just never publish that. We don't tell the public. It's not public knowledge. And I said, well, how would I find that information out then? Because it really would be good for the people to know who is helping to advise her, or who she's discussing with about the rules that are going to be implemented or have been implemented where we live, right? I mean, we should know who's making these rules. And I was told that I would have to file a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information request, in order to find that out. So I have not filed a Freedom of Information request because, yeah, I just was thinking that I probably wouldn't get much back, or it would take a really long time. So I have not filed the FOIA. But you can read some of the answers from the questions that I did on my blog there at fuelignitethrive.com. You can look for blog and go on to, I think it's page 2. It's COVID Questions is the name of the blog. And so, interestingly enough, also, I talked to another health professional about things like information and stuff like that. My own editors would not publish that article, and I see several other health professionals, for care and rehab and stuff, because I was in a car accident a couple of years ago. Anyway, and self-maintenance, I'm just all about that, right? You guys know, keeping my body healthy. And so as I was speaking to another health professional in Kelowna, I was letting them know about, I was a little bit upset that my article wasn't going to run, and I had all these great questions. And he said to me, yeah, that he has a patient who, is an editor of I'm not going to say where, of one of the news places locally. And that person told them that if they printed anything negative about COVID or anything contra to, what is being put out there in the mainstream, that they would be fired. And I was like, really? So that's literally what's going on out there, people. That agencies are being muzzled, and they can't say anything, they can't ask questions for fear that they're going to get fired. So I did actually contact an investigative journalist here in Kelowna, supposed, at least that's what he was known for in the past. And he told me, I said, are you in those press conferences, that Dr. Henry has, or that they have, the public health people have? I wasn't quite sure who all did them, and how they would do that with everybody, staying away from each other. And he said, yeah, they have Zoom ones, the people can log in on Zoom. I said, great. Are you on there? He said, yes, I am. I said, perfect. Okay. And so I started asking, saying a few things about asking questions, and would you ask some questions for me? And he's like, well, I don't know. I was thinking, okay, well, that's kind of weird. All right, maybe you have your own questions. And he did say that not all the time, most of the reporters from the Vancouver area get the opportunities to ask questions. So they're chosen who gets to ask the questions to her, which I thought was interesting. And he said, once in a while, we do get a question. Once in a while, he does get the opportunity to ask a question. And I said, well, if you do get an opportunity, would you please ask for me? Because I'd heard about the PCR polymerase chain reaction is not really a test. It was never designed to be a test, even according to the inventor Carey Mullis, when years ago they wanted to use it as a test for HIV/AIDS. It's not. He said, do not use it for that. It's not a diagnostic tool. It's an amplification tool. So it finds and locates whatever it is you're looking for, and it amplifies it, makes more and more and more. So you have more to use if you needed more data and things, or more cells, things like that you're doing your experiments on and you're doing your data on. That's what it's for. It's to make more. So he said, literally, you can find anything if you're looking for it. And especially if the cycle threshold, so the number of times it amplifies, is too high, then you're going to find with those things people who had already had the virus and it was left over in their body, or who had had a cold or flu from last year, or that even had the flu shot, maybe, because all of these things were related, and it could locate that in your body, and then it would make you test positive. So even Dr. Fauci went online. You can look that up. He has a speech from one of his talks that he says if it's over 35 cycles, then, it doesn't, you shouldn't even count it, because it's just too high. So ideally, then, it's got to be lower than 35. I've heard some experts say 25 is good, so there's a discrepancy of where, but definitely below 35 if you want to consider Dr. Fauci as an expert, and everyone around the world has been. So if we go with that, it has to be at least under 35. So I said, well, will you at least ask what is the cycle threshold of the tests that are being used in Canada or in BC? Are they all the same across Canada? We don't know that either. And he said, I will not ask that question. I'm not going to ask it. I said, well, why not? Why would you not ask that? I thought that was a great question. And he said, because if they respond back and ask me a question back about that, I don't know enough about it. And I said, but you're the investigative journalist. Wouldn't you just investigate before you go there? And he told me something. He said, I don't have enough time. Journalists don't have enough time. There's not enough of us in the newsroom. And I was floored. He said, yeah, no, we rely on people, maybe like you to bring us bring some stuff. And then we check it out if we have time. I've got to get out 2 stories every day. And if I have time after that, then I can speak to people like you and I have a little bit of time to look at something. So that's where our news is going lately, people. This is mainstream. I'm letting you know right now, this is mainstream. I also spoke with both my editors, or some editors from where I submit work to, and they've also confirmed that there's not enough people in the newsroom. And then further to go with news and not enough people doing reporting and kind of not doing due diligence, because if you don't have enough people, then if no one's researching, then in my mind, there's not enough due diligence, right? So several months ago, probably you'll remember, there was quite a young person, a young man who it was reported who had COVID, and he had a really rough go of it. They thought he might even pass away. He didn't, thank goodness. He didn't die, but he had a really rough go of it. And so I was looking up that story just to see what they said about it. I don't even remember. I should have written down all the news medias that I searched, but I didn't. Just letting you know, full disclosure. But the first one that popped up, I read that, and then I thought, I wonder what other news medias are saying about this. So I literally then just started typing in I picked a news agency and then put the story, the topic, and another news agency in the topic. And I started, checking them out. And as I'm reading, I'm like, well, this sounds awfully familiar to what I just read. So then I left them all up on my desktop of my computer, and I went and looked. And then I'm like, oh, that says the same, that says the same, that says the same, that says the same. I stopped when I got to 5, after I checked out 5 different sources. And then I actually, looked, and it was verbatim. There was a lot of the article, like most of the article was word for word on all these different platforms. So it was quite disturbing that we're getting copy-paste journalism and that nobody's asking any different questions. Nobody's deviating from, oh, this guy says it must be true. Let's just put it on my thing because I've got too many stories I have to get out today. Yeah. So that's where that was at. It was more shocking stuff that so not so much direct COVID shocking stuff, but the fact that the way things are being reported nowadays was literally shocking to me. So another thing that I found really shocking, under sort of, keeping things under wraps and not letting the public know, when it started coming out that maybe there would be these detention centers, maybe there would be these COVID quarantine places that, people had to go to, or that we would take you to, or something like that. There was that scuttlebutt, talking around. Justin Trudeau came out and he said, no. We don't have any of those. That's not going to happen. That's not a thing. There was a news, he did that in one of his daily or weekly press releases or whatever, where he was standing outside of Rideau Hall there. And, he said, no, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but that was a thing. And Rebel News did a piece with Cian Bexley, and he was in Manitoba, where he had found one of these facilities. Looks like an ATCO trailer. It was surrounded with chain link fence with barbed wire on the top. It was very, draconian looking and kind of scary, actually. I was like, what the heck is that? And then my husband's, we've got cousins back east, and one of them was messaging me, and they have business, large business, and they do some government contract work. They also, of course, they know other people in the industry and the trades, and who also do government contract work. And they messaged me and let me know that one of the people that they do business with, and also they'd seen it themselves, but these other people had actually, applied to contract with it. There was a government tender going out, and I had seen it actually on the government's website, but I tried to go back and get it, and they've removed it. So, but back in September of 2019 now, September 2019, Government of Canada website had on there the tenders where they put out, for calls for trades and businesses to come and, build things or whatever it is that they need done. They had tenders out there requesting bids on for trades to come and do bids on creating COVID quarantine facilities. So that was a thing. It was out there, and it was out there a long time before anything ever happened. So that raises a huge red flag. And to see that I've seen it when it was, closer to when we were going to actually come to light in the news, but to have it actually, people have seen that the year previous was quite disturbing as well too. Now there is a site where you can go and find things, that are, that have been pulled off the internet, archive.org. And you can try and search and bring things up like that. So I'm considering some of these things and figuring out how to use them. So just full disclosure here, that stuff's new to me. Finding stuff that's been pulled off the internet is very new to me. So I'm thinking about trying to learn how to do that. And then the other thing that our great Prime Minister JT there was saying in front of Rideau Hall that he was asked about vaccine passports, and he was saying, no, that's not going to be a thing. We're not going to implement that in Canada, right? We won't be participating in that. And now he's saying that we're going to be in lockstep with other nations who are doing that, and, we're just going to follow along. So, it's, they say one thing and then turn around and do another. Say one thing and turn around and do another. So we need to start really asking the hard questions and holding our media accountable to making sure that they are asking the hard questions and pressing because we're not getting the truth, clearly. So, my goodness, there's so much stuff to talk about, right? Like, it can go on and on and on. So there's some ridiculousness in all of this, I find, and there's also some danger in a lot of it. So, for one, when the mask mandate came in and they want you to wear masks, in public spaces, and then it was, between things at the gym as you're moving around, and then it was, no, you have to wear it the whole time when you're working out. And I must say, I'm exempt. I don't wear one. And I'm really afraid for those people who get on the treadmill and start running with their face covered, or the older people that are on the rowing machine and they're rowing like crazy and they're working up a sweat and their face is red and they've got their face covered because they're not breathing. They're not getting the oxygen in like they were. And it's detrimental to your health. Everyone has different ideas on masking, but I challenge anybody to just, if you haven't tried it before, put one on, try and do some workout and see how, see if it feels the same as without. It doesn't. We all know that. So, restaurants can ban the indoor dining. Right now we have no indoor dining. If you have a patio, you can have you can have people out in your patio. You can, however, have an enclosed tent outside, and that's okay. I've seen that at White Spot. So you can have an enclosed tent. It just has a doorway opening. So why couldn't you have your restaurant open with the doors open? I don't know. It's a good question, right? Maybe we should ask people. When the indoor dining was open, you had to wear the mask to walk to the table, but not while you're sitting at the table. So clearly the virus is, smart if you're standing up or sitting down. It's sort of like having a peeing section in the pool, right? Like, remember when we had years and years ago that people were still allowed to smoke in restaurants, but there was a smoking section? Who are we kidding, right? It was all the way through the restaurant. Drive-in movies. You can only have 50 cars or less. Why is that? People are in their cars, they're not getting out, they're not going anywhere. 50 cars or less. But you can go to Costco, you can go to Superstore, you can go to Walmart, you can go pick a parking lot, the mall. And there's no 50 car limit. They're not segregated off into 50 stalls and then there's a big space and then 50 stalls and then a big space and 50 stalls. Not like that. No, you can park next to anybody, anywhere, at any time. People are coming and going, getting out of their cars. Yeah. So another thing just makes you go, right? Just sort of makes you ask questions. Yeah. And then the other day, this was back on the lines of dangerous, and it really, really made me sad. So was walking home the other day and ended up running to somebody who I used to see at the gym all the time. They've changed their time and they go at a different time. So it was really great. We stopped on the street there and had a little chat. And they have small children, and I don't have small children anymore. So he said something about school and daycare, and I said, "Oh, do your kids have to wear a mask at school? They don't do that, do they?" He said, No, they don't have to wear masks. They're little. He's got 7 and 3, I think, year old. And he said, but the little one, just her daycare, just recently, the lady who was running the daycare tested positive for COVID, and so of course she had to shut down, and then they sent everyone home. And so he was told. Interior Health contacted everybody and told them to mask their 3-year-old child and isolate her in a room by herself and to avoid touching her for 2 weeks. Yeah. That's what Interior Health is telling people to do to their children. Even a year ago, locking a child in a room or putting a child in a room and refusing to touch your own child, hug your child, bathe your child, help them in the washroom, give them food. How do you even not touch a 3-year-old child? I don't understand that. As a mother, I don't understand that. That would be child abuse. 2 years ago, someone would have had their child taken away from them for doing that. And, every expert you listen to, everybody on every side of the scale, up, down, backwards, and forward, say children are not a vector of transmission. Children don't transmit it. They don't get it. So, why is that even a thing? And why would you do that to your child in your own house? I'm proud to say he did not. And lots of data is being censored, right? Again, we can't ask the questions. Lots of experts have been pulled off of YouTube. They've been pulled off of Facebook. They've been pulled off of Twitter. They, go to a rally and try and speak. They get fined. They try and, arrest people. It's just been a very big disappointment, really, on tons and tons of stuff that's happening that shouldn't be happening. So, there's tons and tons of data on therapeutics, right? Like hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, vitamin D, ivermectin, budesonide. There's tons and tons of things that are out there that came out at the very beginning. Lots of doctors were saying, hey, we've seen some great results with this. And as soon as they started to speak up, as soon as that vaccine, as soon as they started to look at, I think we need a vaccine for this and start to produce that, all therapeutics seem to have been shut down. Now, why would that be? Why would people want to prevent other people from getting some therapeutics and from getting some help should they, come down with COVID? Well, if there's another therapeutic available, so say a vaccine, comes available, like we have several now, and they are not approved by the FDA, which these are not. You can look that up. You can go to the FDA. They have a video out now that says they have not approved it. You can look at the CDC. It says that these vaccines are not approved. They are available via an emergency use authorization. They are not approved. They're not FDA approved. And as these drugs, shots are coming from the States, that is the governing body there. So they are not approved. Just so people know, they think it's approved. It's not approved. If you thought it was approved, sorry, I'm bursting your bubble. It's not. It's under an emergency use authorization. So if the emergency is removed, they can't be used, right? Also, if there's another option, then a drug or a vaccine or a shot or whatever cannot be given an EUA, an emergency use authorization. If there's something else that can do the job, then that other thing that they're, want to be released quickly has to continue to go through the trials. So is this making sense now? So if the government started saying, oh, great stuff here, you can use hydroxychloroquine, you can use ivermectin, you should load up on vitamin D and zinc and all these things, and yes, perfect, well, then we would have these other therapeutics, and then the vaccines would have to still be under trials, and they would not be allowed to have been rolled out as they were. Okay. So, so that's quite, I have something popping up on my screen here, and I'm not really sure what it is. Anyway, we're just going to ignore it. There we go. So yeah, if there was another option, then shots couldn't have been rolled out. and they wouldn't be being used today. And so there's also a lot of people having reactions which are not being reported either. So if you go to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, VAERS, VAERS, you can Google search that, it comes up. It's a site that's been up for decades, designed and set up specifically for people, individuals, doctors, health professionals, whatever, to report any adverse reactions to that people may have to vaccines. So not just for the COVID vaccines, for all vaccines to be reported. The kicker is now, Harvard put out a study a couple of years back that said, they did a study on how many of these are actually getting reported. Like, is this really accurate? Is this really a good representation of how many adverse reactions people are having from vaccines? Right? Fair thought. Why not? Why not take a look and check the numbers? What they came back with was that only about 1% of all vaccine injuries or adverse reactions or deaths were being reported. So anything to do with that, only about 1% was being reported. Now, that could be because some people are lazy. It could be because a lot of people don't even know the site exists, including doctors. I just saw an interview with 3 ladies who had horrible adverse reactions to their COVID shots, all different brands, by the way. And only one of them knew about it, and she only knew about it because her friend's daughter had a horrible reaction as a child, and to one of her childhood vaccines, and she found out about it and reported it. So that was the only reason that this lady knew about it. The kicker is all 3 of these ladies worked in healthcare. They were all nurses, and none of them knew about it. So it's not being widely marketed. It's not being shown to healthcare professionals as, hey, this is what you need to do. If something happens, it needs to be reported over here. Because then we can get a true number of how many people are suffering reactions and how many people are not, right? So then we can know how safe things really are. But right now, that's not the case. So experts are getting censored, stuff's getting squashed, things are getting not reported. And studies are not being read or presented, so there's a mask study out of Denmark and one from the CDC. And, this came out a while back saying, CDC's new study says that wearing masks, improves your chances of protection so you don't get COVID. That was the summary at the top of the study. And both the study out of Denmark and the study from the CDC, both are pretty similar results. And if you actually read the entire study, yes, it does improve your chances. How much does it improve your chances? Read the study. It's about 1%. So really, really, so for all the news medias to go crazy and say, yes, it's like, it's massive amounts better and it's doing so much better for you. They didn't read the study. They read the little summary at the top that didn't give any of the numbers. So I read the studies. People, you should read the studies too. And then so the other thing, and there's several, if you're not following the Great Barrington Declaration, the American Frontline Doctors, Canadian Frontline Nurses, all of these people, massive amounts of groups of people, cannot be wrong. They're all asking questions and they're all being squashed. They're all providing information. They're all being squashed. They're all trying to open up everywhere and just have focused protection on people that need it. And they're all being squashed. All of this, none of that makes sense, right? So again, we should be asking questions. We should also be asking, so recently, different places have started to open up, right? We've seen Texas, we've seen Florida, we've seen tons of other places now. Arizona is all open. And those are the states that are doing really well. Those places that are opened up are doing super well. They've had, our Major League Ball team is down in the United States playing Major League Ball because we don't have it up here. So they've had concerts in Florida. They've had the Southwest Believers Convention happen in Texas like months and months ago. They just had a ball game with almost 40,000 people there. They've had so many different events, week after week, month after month, and their cases continue to go down. So, these kinds of things need to be looked at. They need to be asked, and rather, and while our public health officials up here and possibly wherever you are tightening the screws and putting things harder and harder and harder down, where we have had globally, fewer infections per capita than the United States and then some other places. Well, but now we are the tightest lockdown. Some of our cities are the tightest lockdown cities in all of North America. Does that make sense? Some people would say, well, that means that's why our numbers are so low. No, the numbers were like comparison all the way along. But as they open up, their numbers then plummet. And as we tighten down, they keep telling us our numbers are going up. So I don't know. One's tightening up and the numbers are going up. One's, backing off and the numbers are going down. I'm not sure. Maybe we should, it's a strong argument, right? You can't argue with whole populations of people that are healthy, that are not getting COVID. So, and South Dakota, very interestingly enough, never locked down the whole time. I was not aware of that until a couple of months ago. And Governor Christie Gnome, I heard her speak and she said, no, we've never locked down. We decided to give our people as much information as we could find. Good, bad, whatever, all of it. Just give it all to them. And not just dwell on the case numbers every day. No, they were just going to give them all the information that they could get. So if, a doctor was speaking and he had a therapeutic, if somebody else had this, if somebody else had some numbers, whatever, they were just putting it all out there and letting their people hear it all on the regular news channels and wherever else, and letting the people decide. And letting people make their own smart choices for themselves, because ultimately we are responsible for our own health, you guys, right? We are responsible for our own health. Everybody is. And we need to do that. And when governments are, talking health, that's the word we hear. But we don't hear anything coming out of their mouths about how to create that. They're telling us a lot about what we shouldn't be doing, but there's not a lot about what we should be doing. We haven't heard our public health officials come out and every day in their report, their 3:00 address, say, hey, I hope you guys have had your, couple water bottles by now already today. I hope you've, had some fresh fruits and vegetables already today. I hope you, are ditching the fast food and trying to cook at home, and hopefully you're, upping your vitamin C and getting outside for some sunshine, having your vitamin D over the winter. If you're elderly, have a little bit more of that and having some zinc to go along with it. None of that is being said. Although if you were to ask them individually, they would say that those are good, healthful things. But why aren't they being disseminated over the television, over the newspaper, over whatever media that they're on a daily basis, to put those thoughts into people's heads about how can I create health, giving people hope as to what they can do, as opposed to constantly telling people what they cannot. So there we go. That was all the things that I had found out, the things that had happened to me in my life, in my family, just in my little neighborhood here. People that I know from the gym and from church. And I'm just one person, and if all of these things have happened in my little world, I just think about, the 38 million people in Canada and how many adults that would be. And so what would be the total, how many other things out there must people be going through and have had happen to them negatively as a direct result of these COVID measures that are being taken. They're being forced upon us or implemented without rationale to back it up, without the papers, without the science, without the proof. I firmly believe that if you're going to try and remove someone's freedoms, that, as the charter says, you must first show that this will provide a greater benefit to the population than what we're doing right now. It's going to provide more benefit. It's not going to be harmful. It's going to be less harmful than not doing anything and letting the disease run its course. By implementing X, Y, Z, you're going to have a much better outcome and results in all areas than if we did nothing. And that's clearly not been the case because, people have lost their livelihoods. Suicide rates are up. People are missing, have missed diagnosis, missed their doctor's appointment, missed surgeries, missed out on a lot of things. People have missed out on hugs. People have missed out on life. A lot of kids have missed out on almost a whole year of school. Grads have missed out on their grad ceremonies last year and likely may this year as well too. So there's a lot of life things that you can't get back. And we really have to weigh those with the deaths that are happening and the severity of that, because the numbers from the government's own websites and from the statistical links and from all of those, in my mind, are not supported. So anyway, thanks for watching today, you guys. And I know it's a bit of a heavy topic, but it was just on my heart. I hadn't done a YouTube for a while. I hadn't done a podcast for a while. And that's why, because I was just compiling all this and I just needed to work through it for me. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you found some value on this, please share it. Okay. See you guys next time. Thanks.